Boys, how are you doing? All right?
Good, mate.
Looking
good,
forward to
good
it.
to see people here.
By the way, there's a rumour that the fans have got a bit of needle with each other tonight. Is that true?
Well, Si, I wanted to say, I think the last one was really, no from my point of view, from everybody else's point of view, I thought it was brilliant. Faddy talking a lot of shite. They're all great. No, you're all brilliant. But I actually would like to see the night, Si, a lot of the fans sort of interacting and giving it a wee bit to each other.
But we can't have the Motherwell fan and the Hearts fan getting off each other again. That can't happen, boys, all right? Just need to stop. We can't hear any of that tonight. Right, we're here, Open Goal Fans Forum, brought to you by Glen's Vodka, SPFL Manager of the Month Award. Tonight we're joined by a live audience as well as some social media fan influencers from various clubs in the Scottish Premiership who will have their chance to ask questions and challenge our panel tonight on current issues happening at their club. That was good, that, wasn't it?
You've done well, mate. Fair play.
Well, do you know who the manager of the month is for January?
Drum roll, please. Go on, Kev, drum roll on your belly, please.
Come on, big man. Good, come on, louder. Robbie Nielsen! Gonna jumble!
Look at him, no clapping. He hates him, didn't he?
Oh!
Hates him.
Well deserved, by the way, well deserved.
Well, how well deserved?
No, well, I'm just about to get a bit well deserved as in for Hearts' performance, but the controversial moment of it, Si, is that I think Ange and Beale did have a better record than Robbie Nielsen.
So they both won 5 out of 6, Ange and Beale.
Aye, I think we were 4 out of 6, but if you're giving it the person with the best record, it's going to be Celtic or Rangers every month. So I think you factor in 2 derbies in there, 5-0 against Aberdeen, 4 wins out of 6, the 2 draws being Livy and St Mirren away, 2 tough fixtures. I think it was deserved. But
He's up Robbie Nielsen's arse, isn't he?
Sick yet.
I'm going to say
He's
that.
up Robbie
I'm interested to know what you've got to say about it though.
Kev, what do you think? Well deserved?
No.
Ex-Jambo as well.
I know, but he's done well, but he didn't do 5 out of 6. He only done 4 out of 6.
Good point, aye.
But do you not agree it would be Rangers and Celtic every month then if you're going best record?
Aye, well, that's what happens if you're the best. You get the best every month.
No.
But it's because you beat Hibs, they're fish.
So if
Sorry.
if Dundee United win 4 out of 6 and Rangers win 5 out of 6, then the Dundee United manager doesn't deserve manager of the month.
This is good.
I like it.
This is good.
What do you think?
No. Did I pass on to them? Are you going to give them a bit back or what?
I think I'm a great believer in you reward success all the time. We're too hell bent on we can't get to them 2 again. We'll get to somebody else. You can get to them 2 again because they're the best.
Well, as a Livy fan here, we interviewed Davy Martindale a couple of weeks ago and he thought he should have had it for January. How was Livy's record?
He definitely deserved it in January. We went unbeaten for the month. Success is different at different clubs. So the old firm, you need to win every game, but for us, we've got the lowest budget in the league and we went unbeaten for a month.
Well,
by the way, can I just say,
point,
your manager is an absolute hero. Eh? We went in it. It's incredible how a tight ship he runs at Livingston. You wouldn't believe how professional it is. The detail he goes into in terms of his preparation is incredible.
And as we're going to go into Livingston, but as you said there, the budget, fucking, they shouldn't really be doing what they're doing based on the budget.
No. I think even for I think interviewing them was generally one of my favourite interviews we've done because the insight he goes through, the way they scout players. Let's face it, they bring players from nowhere. People you've never heard of, the background. You look at Joe Newby. Joe Newby's mid-20s, he's probably about 30 clubs. And he's came up and been main man, some of the signings he's made. And I think he's now starting to get more recognition, but I think he's been the most underrated manager in Scotland for the last 2-3 years.
Our Hearts fan, Robbie Nielsen's manager of the month, the last time we done this, he was calling for Robbie Nielsen's head.
Is this true? You want him sacked?
I've been looking forward to seeing you.
I wasn't calling for his head. I just think the second tenure, it's been constantly talking about trying to close that gap on the top 2. Either do it or don't come out and say that. If it's not feasible, then like every fan wants to hear about ambition from their club. Of course they do. But if it's not feasible, then just stop spouting that.
Mm-hmm. But do you know, I think the recent recruitment that they're getting better and better in terms of recruitment-wise, that gap can get closer.
That's years away, Si. You know, we're needing European group stage football year upon year, albeit we're lucky in that Aberdeen are in transition, Hibs are in transition, and we're probably really able to maximise that at the minute.
I think the manager saying that though, he's not necessarily saying we're going to finish second this year. I think he's talking about that as the long-term plans of the club, and you're right, you don't do that unless you don't get last year being the highest ever financial turnover for Hearts. You don't do that unless it's consistent. You're getting European football every year, group stage every year. I don't think there's anything wrong with coming out and saying that. Is it unfeasible just now? Yeah, it is. There's no doubt about that. Celtic Rangers get 10 times and more plus wage budget. But if you don't have that type of ambition as a club, then what are you just happy to be third every year, just staying where you are, or dropping down to fourth, getting European football? I don't think there's anything wrong with coming out and saying it.
It's because I think
that is the aim long term.
Whoever else beforehand, given that we were a mess prior to Robbie coming back, and whatever's happened.
But this season on Hearts, the amount of suspensions and injuries, especially injuries they've had at the beginning of the season, and no saying this in a negative way, but Rangers have not weren't performing too well before obviously Beale came in. Could Hearts, had they had a better start to the season, could they have been closer to Rangers? So that argument that Robbie's saying, it's all like ifs, buts, coulda, woulda, shouldas, but potentially on another time it could have been, because maybe the difference, say 3-4 wins. I know Rangers went up to Tynecastle and probably divinely that Rangers one of the best performances.
Yeah.
Had it been the other way around, add on 3-4 wins, it could have been closer. And could you sitting there as a Hearts fan thinking, do you know what, the manager's quite right, we are going to get close.
In fairness to Robbie, I mean, that was the first time we've been in a European group stage since 2004-05. So maybe it's just a lack of preparation, having not had that for 2 decades. And then we've started to see the repercussions with Thursday, Sunday. I don't know if you'd be able to explain that in greater depth.
I think it's something that's probably not spoken about enough in terms of Hearts injuries. It's like a cruciate injury to Liam Boyce, a cruciate injury to Benny, a double leg break to Craig Gordon, a cruciate injury to Craig Halgett. It's no hamstring strains. It's nothing to do with playing Thursday, Saturday. It's bad luck injuries. It's injuries that are keeping you out for 9 months. So it's nothing in terms of being a long-term schedule. Our podcast for the day is not going to do it. We were talking about it today. Professional football players can play 3 games in a week. Your job as a manager is to try and strengthen and recruit well enough that if you do have these 1 or 2 bad injuries where players are missing for 2 weeks, you've got a replacement coming in that's like for like. But like I said, that injury's been 9 months, like 6 months, 9 months, leg breaks. I've never seen anything like your injury list this year. I know Rangers as well, that especially centre-half positions, some of the injuries they've had to deal with. But Hearts is like, you could have put a starting 11, a very strong starting 11, by the way, that's been in a physio room for a number of months.
And a hair transplant kept you out for 3 months as well.
I died, and then something's happened since then. So I've had 2 concussions. I think they've took a layer of skull off me or something.
It's good to know that's where my foundation money is going towards. Thanks for that, Andy.
Do you want to keep Robbie Neilson there for the long term? It's a great question, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great question.
That's a great question.
Caught me off
I can't believe you're even thinking about this.
It is. I just want to see, like, I don't know, year on year. It's solid enough. I just want us to.
Do you know worry though that if he does leave, you will end up in an Aberdeen situation?
Of course.
I'm looking at you, son. What age are you?
I'm 24.
Right, so you obviously don't know some of the shit that Hearts have actually went through. Do you know what I mean?
Sitting up on the stage,
you're one of these new fans that come in and think, oh God, Robbie Whelan's won like 75% of his games, it's not good enough. Like, seriously.
I don't know why he's coming for your accent, by the way. There was a wee, I think he was trying to do your accent there. I was about out of order.
But my point being, like, I obviously get a lot of good connections at Hearts in the past, and I always
not watching
find
that Derby winner anymore, Kev.
I know, but the point is that every time Robbie Neilson has, say, 2 bad results, and they 2 bad results might be 2 draws, Hearts, I'm going by you, and only the way you've been the night already. You're one of those select few that get him out. Don't want them.
It's bipolar behaviour, but I've just accepted
it. Is bipolar.
It is.
It is bipolar.
See the fans, but is majority of fans behind Neilson?
Aye.
Yeah.
But would you also say the style of play has improved as well under Robbie Neilson, no? Because that championship season, like people said, it wasn't it?
Maybe that's one point against the Old Firm where it's like take the most recent Rangers game, for example. 2 wingers at centre mid. I'm all for going, hammer and tong, but 2 wingers in centre mid? Is that when we've got the likes of Andy, George Grant, Keogh on the bench?
But Andy's for Rangers, so he couldn't play.
Robbie's always worried that you celebrate.
So I guess in my contract, I'm not allowed to play against Rangers. So.
What's your question for the panel?
It was to ask Andy, because obviously Tynecastle's a toxic place to play when it's not going well, as Kev's alluded to. But there must be a feel-good factor where some of the boys that have come from down south are taken aback a bit by Hearts. Is that something that's evident that Robbie's brought back, or has that been...
I hope this is taken the right way, generally, because last year I spoke about the Hearts crowd, the way they turned up home and away, but there's 100% been a difference in atmosphere this year. I don't know if the Gorgialtas that have came in recently is a big part of that, because it only really takes, usually know at football stadiums, only takes a small band or one section to start singing to just generate an atmosphere and people to follow suit. So for me, I think the atmosphere this year at Tynecastle specifically has been unbelievable. I think the away crowd's always been amazing. Turned up 4,000 again at Hamilton, 3,500 Dundee United. The numbers have always been incredible, but for me, the difference in atmosphere has been, I think a lot of big games, obviously Hibs, the derbies, the Aberdeen game, and I'd honestly, if I put in my top 5 atmospheres since I've been at the club, I think 4 of them have been this year. So
I'll also say on the flip side, I went to watch you played at Dundee United 2 weeks ago, and the fans were booing at half time because they were 1-0 down at home, and I was completely baffled by it.
Bipolar behaviour side.
It's crazy, mate, and you could see how much it affects the players. I think it was Kyle Rose, who I think is a right good player, but
Very good.
you could kind of tell that he was wary of the crowd. And
Was that a good thing though?
I don't think so. Do you?
But is that not a crowd demand thing? I mean, everybody mouths off about how Hearts are a big club. That's acting like a big club, is it not?
Hearts
Not
fans
really.
mouth off about Hearts being a big club.
I
Everybody
can-
else does.
go and get that.
Oh, go on.
Go on, big man.
There is only one set of fans that call Hearts a big club.
I'm struggling to hear you for down in 6th, to be fair. Nice you're here.
Look, fish. Is
Brilliant.
Buddy, man.
that why you asked me to bring a black jacket just in case I need to bounce?
You do look like a bouncer, didn't you? huh? Right, brilliant. That was a good wee section on Hearts. Paul, what we want to know?
On to Rangers, Div, the main man. I thought he was outstanding the last
He
time.
was good.
Done
He
well
was
there.
good.
You were excellent, but the last time I'm sure I could be wrong here that Van Bronckhorst was still in charge.
He was.
Are you buzzing, Div, that he's at the door now?
It looks like the tides have changed, to be honest. And I want to ask you guys, what is the main thing you think that Bill has changed? Because we're now kind of getting the best out of guys like Ryan Kent. I think the last one, I'm sitting here going, just let him go, kind of thing, because he wasn't kicking his own arse, but now he's flying. So
Div, sorry,
what has he changed?
do you think Kent will, Bill will keep Kent? Do you think he'll stay?
It's a hard one, innit? Because when he's performed like that, surely there's some interest for like a Premier League club or whatever, and they can obviously pay him probably more money. If he's playing like the way he is, brother, then you just never know. Leeds wanted him, didn't they, before? So have you not seen him play recently, mate?
Yes, Div.
Oh my God, we're going to have a fight in here, aren't we?
Kev, you've got your Rangers subscription.
I've got my
to
Rangers TV, me,
What
Tom.
difference have you seen under Bill?
I think it's under Gio. I would see that sometimes they were quite robotic. Everybody played in their position, whereas now when Michael Beale comes in, the likes of Ryan Kent there, he would say he's floating about all over the midfield, no stuck out in the left on the touchline hogging it, and no getting joy. If he's not getting the ball, he's starting to come in. I think now they've got a more settled back four in terms of having Ben Davies as a left-footed centre half. You've got Barisic, you've got Goldson, you've got Tav. For me, the balance is a bit better, and you're not having to bring, because for a while their Rangers were changing their centre halves all the time, trying to get a good partnership, and Glen Kamara's come back in, who was a big part of Steven Gerrard's reign when he was here.
Gold, wasn't he?
Aye, so he obviously, Beale's come in and basically must have said to him and Morelos, look, you two are going to play each week until we get used to where you were when I was here with Steven Gerrard. So I think he's maybe just giving guys a bit more belief to be expressive. And I think that, I wouldn't say the performances that Rangers have put in and say the 10, 11 games that he's been in are amazing. I think their best performance was against Hearts, but there has been a lot of games where, particularly even yesterday, I don't think they were at their best yesterday.
No.
But they still won. That's all that matters. They're in the next round. The point is that they're getting those results. Under Gio, I don't think they would have got those results.
I think the mentality's changed, didn't it? I think he's changed the mentality.
Aye.
The amount of last-minute goals he scored, especially early on under Beale. I don't think you win the games under Van Bronckhorst. I think he's brought that in at Rangers, where you need to go at the end. You need to win games of football regardless of how we do it. I don't even think you've seen the best of Beale yet. I've been to a couple of games, the Dundee United one, where I didn't think the football was great. I was expecting more in terms of football, but I can understand why he hasn't got that. He needs his own players, and I think once he gets his own players in the summer, I think you'll see a completely different style at Rangers, a better style that Michael Beale prefers. But I think the thing you had to change first and foremost was the mentality of winning games of football.
I'd love to see the running stats between the two of them.
Intensity,
Hasn't it? The intensity's been miles up since he's come in.
My answer's pretty much similar to what you said at the start. Is I think as a manager, you've got to get especially if you're coming into a job mid-season, you've got to get the best out of what you've got. And before Giovanni Van Bronckhorst obviously got the sack, I think it was 2 wins and 6, 2 wins and 5, 2 wins and 6. Since then, they went 12 wins and 13. The only result being a draw against Celtic. And let's face it, nobody fancied Rangers to get in off of Celtic. And I think with the squad that he's inherited, I think the improvement in certain players has been night and day. For me, the main one, Malik Tillman, without a shadow of a doubt. I think a lot of things that was labelled at Malik Tillman was never about technical ability or potential. It was maybe lazy at times, doesn't work as hard as the rest of the team. I look at Ajax away in Amsterdam, Napoli, the Champions League, Celtic at Parkhead, where in games like that, if you're not working as hard as other people out of possession, you're a man short. I think the improvement of his work rate off the ball has been incredible. And I think his impact in games, specifically over the last couple of months, you're talking about a goal or assist every game. So now for me, no, obviously recruitment's going to be massive in the summer. I'd imagine there's going to be a fair overhaul at Rangers, but I think priorities for now have to be Ryan Kent and a new deal and Malik Tillman. Whatever happens with him, I think Michael Beale said a couple of weeks ago there's a fee already agreed. There's a fee agreed, get it done. There's no point waiting to keep scoring every week and then Bayern Munich say, do you know what, hold on, we'll take him back, we'll sell him for more, we'll loan him to somewhere else, we'll see what else we can get for him. I think if there's a fee already agreed there, I don't know what the hold up is for it, just get him tied down.
Do you think standards have improved as well, Andy? Did you not say after the Aberdeen game, although they won, he was raging after? You can't really imagine Van Bronckhorst doing something like that after a win at Pittodrie.
Yeah, I do think it was. Listen, I'm not sitting saying he done a fantastic job, but I do think a lot of the criticism towards Van Bronckhorst wasn't fair. I don't think he was back to the levels he should have been, specifically after the sales of Nathan Patterson, Joe Aribo, Calvin Bassey. But I do think a lot of the football at times, specifically this season, wasn't great to watch. And I do agree, I think there's been a lot of games with Rangers this year that's maybe not quite been there, but I see a lot of players as if they've been dragged off a leash. There's a leash not around their neck anymore. I'm talking about bodies being in the box and a bit more free flowing, a bit more attacking, especially with the fullbacks and the midfielders. I do think there's a long way to go. I don't think they're quite at the level of Celtic yet, to be honest. But I think in these 13 games, you've only really seen one 90-minute performance, and unfortunately, it probably did come against Hearts at Tynecastle. But yeah, listen, 12 wins in 13 is obviously a very good start, but I do think they've got a bit to go.
You quite like the leash around your neck, don't you?
Love that every night. Div, does Rangers, do you feel for Beale that he needs to win this cup final against Celtic?
Well, it'd be absolutely huge. I mean, you seen what Ange done. He kicked on for that, didn't he? He was going through a wee bit of a tough time at the start when he came in at Celtic, and when he won that, it kind of gave them belief, didn't it? So it's his first cup final. So I think if he can emulate what the Hearts performance, then they'll certainly get a chance. But the performance needs to be up at their levels, I think, if they're going to do it.
Who'd be a bigger miss if they left, Morelos or Kent? I know everyone would probably think the obvious answer is Kent, but if you look at Morelos' record over his time at Rangers, it's probably better than Ryan Kent.
I think right now you've got to say Kent, because I think Kent's shown more. I think Morelos is another one that's certainly improved under Michael Beale. I think being a part of the team, he's the type of player that needs to play. If he's not playing for 2-3 months, he's not fit. He's obviously, his body shape's never going to be great by sitting on a bench, but I think he has improved under Michael Beale. But like Kev says, I couldn't agree more. Like 2 years ago, the thought of losing Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos, letting their contract run down, losing them for free, it should never have got to that situation. After the year Morelos scored 14 goals in Europe, I don't know what his market value is, but I'd imagine it'd be pretty decent to then think 2 years later you're losing them on a free. I think there's been, Ryan Porteous at Hibs is a big one. Like players like that, when they're so important to your football club, they should never get to a stage where there's 6 months left in their contract, because if they do well, you're going to lose them for nothing. So it is a priority. I think Ryan Kent's more a priority now, because I imagine he's attracting more clubs than Alfredo Morelos based on this season. But for me, I would still offer the two of them a contract.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
Aye, good.
You should be sitting up here.
Do you think Ryan Kent could play in the Premier League? Obviously, man doesn't he behind it.
I do. I think he's brilliant. I think Ryan Kent's brilliant. I really do.
I definitely think he's definitely. See, when he's doing what he's really good at, and that's driving at people with the feet and that. Who else? I know there's a lot of players in the Premiership do that, but he could fit into some of those mid-table Premier League teams and do that, because what people forget is when you go into the Premier League, you're surrounded by a different level of footballer around you, so they bring out even more in you. And I think that's what sometimes you see players up here in Scotland, you think, how's he moving down south? He's not going to cut that down there. But they all go down, and the majority of everybody that goes down does well. There's no reason why.
Just his numbers and his numbers need to improve. I think
you're absolutely right. Assists and goals isn't probably where you would want to be a winger. But listen,
he's not letting anyone speak, isn't he?
I think that's a good thing. So I think he definitely could, 100%.
Sorry, take it away.
Again, I think he's a good player, but I think these Premier League managers need to look for numbers. One thing he does, he's always fit Ryan Kent, and he plays every game. He looks like he's in superb condition, but I think he could play for a lower league Premier League team, but his numbers need to improve.
Sorry, Slane, just ask you a question and feel free to jump in if you've got anything to say about it. What do you think Rangers' aspirations should be in terms of the league this year?
Just need to keep winning, mate. Game at a time, I think. It doesn't look like Celtic are slowing down, but they just need to keep winning. I even like some of the wee mind games that Michael Beale's trying to play with Ange, saying lucky, things like that, because that's something you would never have got out of jail. But Celtic, on the part, don't look like they're slowing down. So for me, mate, it's just about winning. every game at a time. There's still 2 Old Firm games, so you just never know.
Oh, Callum, he's
Never
not
know,
happy.
mate.
He's not happy.
Just to break it up a wee bit here, right? The biggest difference, Andy, you says, was the last time this was on, the Rangers were winning games 1-0s, 2-1s. What's changed? They keep winning that. If you actually look at their cup record against the lower teams, I'm buzzing that we've got Hearts away, because it'll be a scoosh compared to what they've got at home. They struggled against Queen of the South. Was it 3-1? I think the Rangers won obviously last night 3-2 with an own goal. Dundee 1-0 as well, I'm sure. It was turgid to watch. I'll let you explain that one, right? But so what's changed? Well, there's nothing's changed.
Well, no, I think something has changed because they've won 12 out of 13. Under Gio, you're right. Some of the wins weren't great to watch 1-0, but they weren't winning every game.
But remember,
Still
Gio
dropped a lot
only
of
lost one game outside the Celtic.
But he has the same. He has the-
But he drew a lot of
No,
games.
no,
And he did lose more than that. He lost against St Johnstone as well.
No, I'm saying one outside of Celtic. So he only
Outside,
lost to
yeah.
Celtic obviously a couple of times.
But it's still a number of draws. It's 2 points drop.
Right? No, I get
Like
that,
that,
but
huh?
that's probably the biggest thing is that Celtic are relentless. We like that, and I don't want to say that we never stop, but it genuinely is.
Slane will say it, don't worry.
No.
His mum and dad are saying it tonight.
He's still got the banner above his bed.
They'll be saying that all night, tomorrow.
I just think probably the biggest difference between both clubs is that we've got a really, really special manager. If I'm being fair to that, Michael Beale's very untested, unknown, and everybody laughed at him when he first came here. Everybody doubted him. He'd be out. I think Chris Boyd says he should just resign and leave. And I mean, look at him. I don't know where Boyd is anymore. He's just hiding in London somewhere on Sky.
On that then, who do you think's had a better start in Glasgow's manager then? Did Ange have a better start? Did Michael Beale have a better start? And what does that tell you about the future?
What I will say, right, and the difference is Beale had a better start, but if you look at the two squads,
Right,
Celtic's squad was absolutely terrible when he first took it in
He also had a full pre-season as well, didn't he?
Dev,
Remember, we played
my
hard.
wife always says it's not how you start.
It's how you finish. Exactly, Kevin. Thank you. Exactly. But that probably is the biggest difference, is that when Ange first came in, I mean, I think we played at Tynecastle and Kyogo had just signed that day and came up, didn't even know players. Starfelt as well. And we just really struggled for the 3 games. Beale's obviously came in and took a European finalist team. I mean, I know you lost obviously Aribo and Bassey, but there's still a good spine there. Ange never picked up the same, but as the difference over the last 18 months is, I feel, and a lot of Celtic fans probably feel, is as long as Ange is here, he's not going to lose the league. He's probably too strong for the rest of the team.
I would agree with you with the fact that he's come in, he's won 12 out of 13 a draw, and the performance haven't been wow. But like Andy says, he is still getting the points and still winning games. What happens when it all eventually does click?
No, maybe
Proper, like the performances go up a level. Does it then does it get better?
It's just they'll maybe win 2-0.
But it's not just that. Celtic as a whole club look like they're in a better place
But
in terms of recruitment, the players that they're bringing in,
the
how
difference
quickly they're
in
getting
that
new
is
players in.
Celtic and Rangers, when they play well or play bad, they win most times anyway because of the strength and depth in squads. So it's no surprise that he's come in and he's won 12 out of 13. Like, that's what he should be doing. That's easy. It's the games when we come to town. What happened? But see, we're not the worst team in the Champions League history. That's all I say. We're the worst team in the Champions League history, my man. Come on.
Do you know how
Levels to this game.
Tim, up the road.
But not. That's
Gave him the alley-oop there, didn't he?
No, but see, generally, because this is a conversation I have had, and Ange Postecoglou has done brilliant Scottish football. There's nobody that should even remotely debate that. And I think the performances in Champions League were much better than what the points suggested. But is that not the next step for you, for Celtic, for Ange, that in European football they should be doing a wee bit more?
Mate, of course it should be, because then the reality hits you. Everybody watched Rangers and Leipzig, and then when the draw gets made, you think, right, fancy our chance against Leipzig. But the difference is when they come to town and they've got a different manager, they play a different way, they've got Timo Werner up front, there's a little bit more quality, and the difference was there was a gap between Celtic and Leipzig. There was. See the way they pressed us. Now, for example, St Mirren at the weekend in the Cup, brilliant. And 5-1 is probably unfair on St Mirren because they actually pressed Celtic really, really well in the game. But the difference is Celtic take some subs off and they put Hatate and O'Reilly on and they get 3 goals. So as long as the 5 sub rule stays, Celtic will dominate every single game like that all the time. Even when they struggle in some games, we'll just blow other teams out the water because of that sub, because the strength and depth is ridiculous. In Europe, Celtic always have to get better. The record since we last won a knockout round was 0-3 going to Seville. I mean, that's shocking. To be fair, it's got to be better than that. And you look at the managers, Rodgers, etc. We played Valencia, not a massive side in the Spanish League. They are a good team, but when they come to Celtic Park, they shouldn't be winning 2-0. So we games like that are big frustrations. We need to perform at a better level in Europe. That's not even a question. But can I see Ange improving Celtic? Yeah, I definitely can. He's took us up levels.
But do you think he'll be here for the long haul, Ange?
If you're asking me if he's going to like somebody like Leeds, then no, I personally.
But you see somebody like Rodgers went to like a Leicester.
No, I get that, but Leicester won the league in the last 5 years. What's Leeds done in the last 30 years?
But do you think Ange would need to maybe go to like a?
He'll need to go to a mid-team. Aye.
So do you know think like a Liverpool or like a Tottenham would go for Ange now?
I think he'd probably shoot Liverpool, right? I really do. The brand, he's quite confident. Liverpool are a bit of a mess now, but as long as he stays at Celtic, then that's all that matters to me.
So do you think Ange will stay long? With Celtic?
I think he's unless it's a big club like Liverpool, etc. Then I think he'll go. I don't know what this is with England and Scotland. Look at Ryan Porteous, for example. He goes to Watford, and Watford are a big club, right, in the Championship. But he probably could go a little bit higher than that. But that's where he's ended up. Now look at Mitomo, Brighton. He's getting talking about for what, 70, 80 million pound. He going to somebody else, right? No, but he went for 3 million. But now, what would you need to pay for him now?
No, that's what I mean. 3 million.
You'd need to pay a fortune. So I said it to one of my mates, and I says about Hatate. Hatate's just as good as him, but I know they play different positions. But the quality, he's just as good. Hatate could go and play in the Premier League easily. Look at Liverpool's midfield, stinking. Hatate could easily play there. I genuinely believe that, right? But he'll never get that move. It'll never happen. And it's the same for Ange. I think that he's good enough to go to a top club. But it will never happen. They'll never take that risk. It just won't happen. But what I don't get is, look at how Southampton, for example, how did the Jones boy get the job?
Jones.
How did he get that job? For Luton? How'd you go for Luton?
Don't say that for Cal Naismith.
Keep them up. He got sacked the next day.
So how does that happen? So there's this stigma around Scotland that we cannot get players. Andy just covered it there, and he says these are the days that are long gone, that we can't let players sell when they get down to the last contracts, i.e. Juranovic. How did he go for £7.5 million? That's scandalous. When he's played a good World Cup, and we're talking about Ryan Kent, if he had maybe 2 years left, he'd be worth such and such. And I know there's a bit of an age difference. I think Kent's maybe 26 and Janovic's 27. Played at the World Cup. Kent's never played at a decent level, apart from Scotland, and then also in Europe. So we're talking about him getting a good club. Now, I know Union Berlin are sitting second in the Bundesliga, so obviously they are a good side this season, but through history they're not. So there is a stigma that we only reach a certain level across all, that's managers or players, and they won't go to a certain...
The thing on Juranovic is, right, is obviously £7.5 million. That was only what one club was willing to pay for him, so it's hard to demand 10, 15, 20 million quid if there's nobody coming in the shop wanting to buy it.
No.
You know what I mean? That £7.5 million is his price tag. It's like your house.
You don't
sell your house for 50 grand. That's all it's worth.
Right, we're on to Aberdeen.
Unbelievable. Are you happy Jim Goodwin gets sacked?
Are you happy he gets sacked?
As in, did I think it was time for him to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Everything's fine in Aberdeen, by the way. It's all fine. There's nothing to say there. I got asked 2 minutes ago, who did you have in the cup at the weekend? Absolutely ridiculous.
That's why we organised the night, because we knew that Aberdeen weren't going to be in it.
Yeah.
But are you surprised how quickly he fell? Because he was third before the World Cup.
Neither were Hibs, am I right?
Yeah, so going into the World Cup,
Yeah, he was third.
things had been so. There were some poor results around that. But this season is like last season. Everyone's been poor. Generally, there's been weird results. Everyone's beating everyone. I think except Ross County and Rangers and Celtic, we've beaten everyone. And I think they've all beaten us pretty much. Everyone's record is pretty mixed. So we are probably, we're 7th at the moment, but we're closer to third than we are to the bottom. And we were third. And I said, going into the World Cup, if someone had offered you third in a cup semi, you'd say that's brilliant. Because it is. That was fine.
So did anything dramatic change, or was it quite similar to before the World Cup?
We had a little holiday at the World Cup, and then everyone came back and simply packed in. We played Celtic. We did what Rangers used to do at the little breaks in January, go off on a little holiday and come back and just... And Celtic have this whole we never stop thing, which is cringe. But we've just never started. So we came back, we played Celtic, and we set up in the most... We were defended in the sea in the second. It was honestly terrible. Then we'd beaten Rangers, and everyone was absolutely buzzing, and that would have actually probably things would been fine. And then we didn't beat Rangers at all.
See,
We never stopped, but you did stop.
When
when
the second goal, when the equaliser went in, I was like, oh God, a point. And I was like, I never even thought they'd get another. So that was absolutely horrendous. And then Christmas, lost to St Mirren, lost to Killie, had a horrible draw with Ross County. Graham Shinnie came back, and so all had a little Saturday afternoon of excitement because we beat St Johnstone and everyone was buzzing. And then the Edinburgh ones. I missed Hibs because I was in Seville, and it was much nicer than being there. Honestly, it was not good. Fans got booed on the park, back on. The players got booed back on. The players that we have are not bad. There are plenty good players in that squad. And there has just been, I think since, things weren't great at the end of McInnes and he did need to go. And we were churning out points, we were. And I said earlier that I think Killie will be absolutely fine because if it comes down to it, McInnes will get points.
What do you mean it wasn't great?
Plenty. Oh, it was horrendous, like 1-0s if we won a game, a lot of draws.
Who we did at McInnes?
Yeah, it was getting poor. In fact, I think his last game was a 1-0 loss to Killie.
I think that the main complaint that Aberdeen fans had about Derek McInnes was the style of play, which is then why they bring in Stephen Glass for a more free-flowing brand of football.
That was
struggled. But see for me, I do think, having played against them a couple of times this year, and I know I'm saying this after beating them 5-0, but I do think Aberdeen are better this year than last year. I think they've got better players.
Got a better
I know the
squad,
league position doesn't suggest that, but I do think they have improved slightly. This could be completely wrong. This is just my opinion. I look at when Celtic beat Dundee United 9-0. I just thought psychologically they were done. I thought Dundee United were finished after that. I don't think they could recover. I think after the Rangers game, conceding in the 95th and the 97th minute, I thought psychologically Aberdeen were again. I just think there's always some victories in football that you just think this club. I don't know if these players are going to recover that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month.
Well,
Managers don't get that time.
Yeah,
in a month, you might have
atrocious.
12 games, 9 games, whatever it might be. And then, I mean, you look at Jim Goodwin when Rangers score to make it 3-2, he's on his hands and knees. When do you see managers do that in losses, last minute losses? And then for that, then go on a, 1 win in 11, something
We got Graham
crazy.
Shinnie back and had 2 days
the
of
St Johnson
everyone.
game. And I've said it so many times in the podcast, I'll never talk about managers should get sacked, why they get sacked, for many reasons, but 5-0 to Hearts, followed by a 6-0 to Hibs, it's hard to come back from. They take victories where it's just, it's not about the defeat, it's a man of defeat. So I think now the most interesting thing with Aberdeen is who do they bring in?
He makes a good point about this because they brought Stephen Glass in and they signed players to play that type of football, and then they go and get a defensive manager in Jim Goodwin.
I mean, Jim Goodwin, as far as I'm aware, that he was very direct at St Mirren. Very, very direct. And he's sitting there, changed the whole club, the whole philosophy of the club. For Derek McInnes, the chairman, he's changed it all. He says, we need this new style of football. We're going to bring youth through back to play for the back. It doesn't work under Stephen Glass, who he was raving about on the radio, talking a lot of rubbish with, if you remember. And then brings in a manager who was, as we said, defensive. So it makes no sense what he came out with McInnes.
There is a plan in place where Colin McMurray says the club going long term.
Yeah, I think it's difficult with the manager situation because actually it is hard to see who could. You can't. I mean, I said that if we were getting someone from the current manager, I'd have Ange, but I'm not sure he's going to come to us. You'd be really gutted.
Where does Dave Cormack go for you?
Well, see, to be honest, I think a big start is Alan Burrows. Sorry, Gogsy, but I do think somebody within the back room that does the dirty work that we don't see, where the club does have a structure, does have a long-term plan, because they never had that before.
We've got the football monitor.
That is the sort of the gap that bridges between the playing staff and what they're doing behind the scenes. So I think that, because Alan Burrows has done a brilliant job at Motherwell with a lot of off-the-field stuff, financial,
a Joe Savage
stuff.
type.
Joe Savage type,
yeah.
It's true. It's someone like that, someone that sort of...
But they've sacked 2 managers this season. They've sacked 2 managers.
And that's the thing I've said with Alan Burrows as well, but Aberdeen fans didn't want the community to be better. They want their team to be better on the pitch.
But all right, having a great community, but you've sacked Graham Alexander after a few games, and then you've given Stevie Hamill, he's now been sacked. I think you could get somebody else in and hear him sacked before the season finishes.
That's what I'm half expecting as well. And
am I right in saying that Alan Burrows is still at Motherwell?
Currently, yes, until the 27th of February.
So you've got the chief executive of Aberdeen working for Motherwell, and neither of them have got a manager.
It's just a whole clusterfuck, really.
It is, isn't it? Because it's like he's got a manager in line and he's flicking heads or tails to see if he takes it to Aberdeen or Motherwell.
Right, just before we move on to Motherwell, Cullen, have you got a candidate in mind that you'd like to see get the Aberdeen job?
I wanted Goodwin when we got him, and now it is actually really difficult because do you go? I saw the Poland manager was saying he wants it. I don't really like when people say that they want the job. It's not really how it works.
Chris Wilder would have been an unbelievable appointment, but he's obviously ruled his sell out. But when I seen he was on the short list, I thought, if you get him, then...
What about the current guy, Barry Robson? Aberdeen boy, what do you think?
The carrot guy?
Carrot guy? Oh, do you know someone we didn't know?
That's me.
Current guys.
There's the risk, I suppose, that we do all right the rest of the season, and then it's here's this job, and that's fine. But then is that a proper process? And to be honest, what we had a loss to St Mirren, and then we beat.
He did get a man sent off early, didn't he, in the St Mirren game?
And it wasn't. I don't think it was red card, but yeah. So, and then we also had two centre halves who just turned up that minute and never seen each other before.
That's right.
Although you'd have thought our whole defence had never seen each other all season, but our two new centre halves are good, and actually on paper the squad is fine. I think we'll be okay. I'm not as worried. This time last year I was getting concerned, and I think we were close last year to being in a problem.
But you just wonder what they're looking for now as a manager. Which style of manager do they want? Which style of fit were they looking for?
What type of profile as a manager? It's like I said, when you look at Chris Wilder, the job he done at obviously Sheffield United, back-to-back promotions, getting in the Premier League, to get somebody of that calibre would have been massive.
So should these managers be getting longer?
I personally think that
should get longer.
I think Jim could have turned it around. I genuinely think he could have done. I think the Darvel one was the big soccer punch. And then obviously losing 6-0 to Hibs. Nobody loses 6-0 to Hibs.
But then it doesn't help him when he's coming out 3 days before the game saying if he didn't win the game, then you're sacked. Of course you're going to lose the game.
I think if we'd beaten Hibs, it would have been different. The Darvel one was a nightmare, but it was...
The Darvel one can happen to any club. That's just Scottish Cup football. It's a one-off game that can happen at any point. But the manner and the way the defeat was, it was as if the players had chucked it. So should like a chairman with maybe inexperience in that role be coming out and saying, if he doesn't win this weekend, then he's out the door. I think
see, when you say that, so they chucked it. The battered Darvel second half.
No, but I'm not saying chucked it. I'm not saying they chucked it against Darvel.
They looked nervy. They looked like they were a team under pressure.
No, but what I mean is they chucked it against Hibs.
I've never seen the Hibs game.
The
But I don't think after that statement, of course you're going to be playing like that.
I don't think one result should be getting a manager sacked, but I think it's very hard to say. The three of those were bad. And then once the fans had properly turned, and what do you do then? It's very hard to get that back. We had the transfer window, St Mirren. We had a win last week, and then with Celtic on Saturday. So it's not as though I can even really see where we're going to get a good run from.
Aye.
But I don't want to become a club that sacks a manager twice a season, because I think how do you ever get any kind of stability then?
It always comes down to the manager on the end, because I was at the Hearts game where the Hearts beat them 5-0, and the first 10-15 minutes it was a pretty even game. Aberdeen looked decent, Hearts looked alright, and then it was just like the manner in which the goals were conceded. It was just a long throw into the box and Hearts scored, and then before you know it was like 4-0 at half time.
If we go behind,
and I'm sitting there thinking, is there any like characters in this team that can grab their teammates and maybe turn this around? And I just couldn't see that. And that then comes from, for me, you're needing the players to step up, but the manager has to try and galvanise his players. And I think that's where I thought that night, I thought he's lost some of those players. And then obviously the week after Darvel, then the week after that, 6-0 to Hibs, it's like the players have just kind of wrapped it. And I felt sorry for Jim Goodwin, but ultimately he's the one that'll head on the chopping board.
Just quickly, would you take Derek McInnes back?
No.
Okay.
And I think we were right at the time. There'd be some results, but I don't think it's long-term the right plan. I don't know.
McInnes long-term had you success. He had you in cup finals, semi-finals, third, fourth in the league.
Yeah, but then
Kev was talking about consistency. He couldn't have been more consistent, Derek McInnes.
But it was getting worse and worse, and that's the problem.
I know, but is that because he loses his best players every year? Does he deserve a wee bit of a bad patch to get them back to where he had them before?
Why are you losing your best players?
Because people come and give them more money.
But then, I suppose, it's difficult, so it's hard to turn down a lot of money. We are actually in an all right position where financially we are okay, and I think I don't think Aberdeen's an unattractive team for someone to come to, but it's whether do we just wait till the summer now, maybe.
Wait, on like Hearts' Robbie Nielsen and Joe Savage's vision of can we get closer to the old firm? Had Aberdeen not got rid of Derek McInnes and maybe given him the money that
Now, these guys have had 100%.
The next lot of managers have had, so if you think of the money they've had to pay Stephen Glass to get rid of him, pay the money to get rid of Jim Goodwin because he's been sacked, the money that they've spent bringing in players, had they just given that big pot of cash to Derek McKinnon and say, can you take us closer to the Old Firm? Could he possibly have done that instead of the football's boring and we'll just kind of cut corners and keep selling our good players every year? There's an argument that that's bad management from above.
The last
in terms of a chairman's role.
Before McInnes left, we just panic bought. I can't bear it. It was absolutely horrendous. It's not good. But I don't know. But I think we'll probably have to wait until the summer because I think if you get into the habit of hiring managers and then, I mean, that's what, 2, not even a year. And then you can never really form a proper team around that. Because players don't know.
I didn't get the whole McInnes' football wasn't good. I played against his Aberdeen team and I fucking hate playing against them. I thought they were a right good team.
It's not good to watch though, and it was starting to become, grinding out 0-0s and 1.
Played with 2 wingers who attacked all the time, 2 attacking fullbacks with Graham Shinney. I didn't think it was defensive football at all.
Was it quite direct? Is that what they were,
I thought it was attacking football under Derek McKinnon.
Fucking right with that.
Could be.
Eddie, you've been absolutely brilliant, but they need to move on for Aberdeen now. Fuck me.
I've had enough of them, aye.
Look at Gogsy! Look at Gogsy waiting like he cannot wait.
Yes, Gogsy!
Burrow's away, and obviously Stevie Hamill, a club legend, away. Is it hard times now to be a Motherwell fan?
Is it crisis?
I think since the administration days, this is the toughest time.
Do you, mate?
Because there's so much uncertainty.
What about when I left?
Sorry, who are you again?
Go on, Gogsy.
Yeah, again. When you left, that's a bank holiday in Wishaw.
Mate, you didn't even go for $1 million, so there's no even any point.
I paid your pitch.
What, that one that was just a farm field?
The farm one.
Yeah.
Right, Gogsy boy, take it away. Sir.
Anyway, I'll be as brief as I can. Like, since the first fan forum, we've played 10 games, 30 points available. We've only got 4 points from those 30 games that we've played. 30 points that we could have got from. Motherwell, with a really extremely loyal fan base, does not merit having 1 win all season at home. And to put that into perspective, St Johnstone have come to Fir Park and won twice. I wasn't there on Saturday when we got humbled by Wraith Rovers, thankfully, due to another commitment. But every post-match interview that Stevie Hamill did over the last month or two, it was the exact same. We need to do this better, we need to do that better. And it's been all talk from the club, top to bottom. And then the chairman comes out with a statement saying something very powder puff that didn't fill me with any confidence at all. And it really just begs the question, are we ready to actually go into a relegation battle? And for me, the answer is no. Because, well, we've got Kettlewell coming in, but I think he was always going to be a replacement for Hamill should he depart. So I think we have to really rely on a sort of managerial bounce on Wednesday against St Mirren to potentially get any momentum. But
Against St Mirren, if that's your first one. Sorry.
do you know from experience?
Yeah.
Am I right in saying Stuart Kettlewell got Ross County relegated?
Can't remember, but I thought he was doing.
They were sitting bottom of the league, I
When
think,
he
when
left.
got sacked.
Yeah. They were struggling, so yeah, it's looking very bleak at the moment.
Did Stevie Hamill no bring Kettlewell in? Was Stevie
He done the youth.
wasn't he?
Aye, but Stevie Hamill was the head of the youth, and then he brought Kettle in for the 18s. He got promoted to Stevie Hamill's role. So my thinking would be, would he not be helping Hamill anyway?
There were
To some extent. So
there were
you
rumours
sacked
that
a guy that was helping a guy and you brought him in.
yeah, it's
I think
very
relegated, mate.
very disorganised.
Fortunately, we've done the same. So
I think they're right.
You have done the same with
Sack Ross.
Jack Ross and bring his assistant manager.
Aye.
To be honest, mate, I think you should just stay up. Just save us the bother.
fine.
I said it on the podcast. I think it is a shootout between Motherwell and Dundee United.
Aye.
Yeah, it's looking.
Motherwell, honestly, Motherwell are a weird one for me because played against them twice. You'd have probably been at the game at Fir Park. Seen them a few times this year, and I think a lot of the performances don't merit the results they've had. But 4 points in an available 30s, it's never going to be good enough. Doesn't matter what football club you're. But I think they've actually played some decent games, some decent performances. But home record, I mean, when you look at Kelly, obviously Astro, whatever it is in Rugby Park, they're picking up home results. Ross County, home results. Dundee United, maybe not so much, it's a bit more sporadic and spread out, but I think that is a a big issue for Motherwell.
The thing
this
is,
season.
I came on here and I actually made a point saying that we can take the lead, but we can't actually hold on to it. Just a couple of weeks later, we played against Kilmarnock and we were 2-0 up, and then they got a man sent off, and then all of a sudden they turn into prime Brazil. Like,
I've asked this on the podcast, Gogsy. What do you think the pitch has been a hindrance to you? Because you get that pitch and it's not like Motherwell play fantastic football. Does it help the opposition more than it helps Motherwell?
I'd say so. I mean, we spent $1 million on the pitch. If we spent $1 million on the squad, we'd be much further up the table.
Get yourself an Astro.
that is what we debated.
What's that? Davy Martindale's got Astro in his living room, isn't he? His living room's AstroTurf. So who do you want to see, Gugsy, if you could get somebody in for out at the end of the season? Who you want? Faddy?
I mean, Faddy knows his Motherwell as much as I do, so I'd love Faddy to come in and actually help steady the ship. But, I mean, right now, I don't think we need a tactician. We need a man manager, because there's so much poison in that squad, and it's cured. Otherwise, we are going down.
Do you think somebody like Jim Goodwin, who's been sacked, could he come in?
Who's the poison? Who's the poison?
Well, no,
Where's the poison coming?
Who's the poison?
The poison is the mentality. We've got players that are, in my opinion, good enough, but there is no team cohesion. Like, we've got players like Kevin Van Veen. I know he's got a bit about him, but sometimes he just looks like he can't be.
I agree.
That's a great point.
I agree.
There's some players in that squad that are going into their fourth manager at the club. I mean, third different manager in a season. I mean, being really unrealistic, I'd love Neil Lennon to come in and shove a rocket up their arse, because I know he can do that. But also, it may be very unpopular here, but Yogi Hughes might be a shout. But to be honest, I'm clutching at straws, because nobody in their right mind would take the Motherwell job right now.
But even that on the Alan Burrows. So what's your view on Alan Burrows? Has he done a great job at Motherwell?
He's done all he can at Motherwell. I think, well, everyone comes to a point in their job, no matter where you are. You come to a point where you need to look pastors new, and he's spent 15 years at the club. People have done worse for murder. Like, honestly.
Good point. I keep saying that about this place.
Well, anyone's bigger than Motherwell at the moment in the league, because we are absolutely dross.
But even like the 5 guys you've just signed, who are they Stephen Hamill signings?
I mean,
who's signing these guys?
I don't know. Honestly, pick anyone off the street.
And that's where these clubs are. I know you talk about how good the managers are, but the structure at Hearts, the structure like it makes such a massive difference to the manager.
See, the thing is, clubs in all over Europe, they set a deadline by like the 15th of January during transfer window. Like, give us the deadline of the 15th of January, and then if you want to move on, we'll have your move sorted for then. But we have never been that organised to actually go and look at players and get them in early transfer window, and then they've got the full month to train with the club, and then actually have a squad bedded in for the 31st. Because January the 31st that just passed there, that was the most bizarre day of my life, because I was scrapping through work just trying to find if we've actually signed someone that can play football.
Well, we actually did refresh Twitter, and Motherwell had signed somebody for every hour of the transfer.
I was surprised.
I don't know how many.
I was surprised.
How many did they sign the last day of January? 7?
I don't know, but I think we got 9 in over the course of the month.
See, for clubs like Motherwell and Aberdeen, is it no more important that you get the person above the manager sorted before you actually appoint a manager?
You tell me. You're the one in football. I'm just a fan.
It's got to be right above.
I mean, you look at Dundee United. Dundee United's problems. I know the fans, for one, are not happy with Tony Ashcar.
Yeah, massively unhappy with Tony Ashcar. Blew the budget in the summer, brought in players which individually they have quality. I think when people saw United at the start of the season, they thought they've recruited well and they're going to do okay this season. They've brought in, decent players. Dylan Levitt is a good player. Jamie McGrath's a good player. They got him ahead of Aberdeen. They spent big money on Levitt. They've brought in Stephen Fletcher as a good player. But there's massive gaping holes in it, and Tony Ashcar is deeply unpopular because he's completely unaccountable because all he does is sack the manager and then there's no responsibility for his own position.
But again, Dylan Levitt's only a good player if he plays in a passing team. Every time I've came to watches this year, you kick your ball up to Stephen Fletcher.
You're 100%.
So what's the point in a Dylan Levitt in your team?
So the balance of the team is completely wrong. United have committed the least amount of fouls in the league, which maybe this is kind of an old-fashioned Scottish mentality, which is probably wrong. But if you're at the bottom of the league, they should be snapping into things. Perhaps they just like Celtic passed round them when they lost 9-0. It was completely embarrassing. They've got two very good midfielders in the middle of the park, ball-playing midfielders. Levitt, McGrath, you let them have the ball, they will pass round. They are good footballers. But last year they had like a Jandro Fuchs or, maybe even a Callum Butcher, who Motherwell have picked up. Kind of a hatchet man, basically. United are soft, are completely soft for the middle of the park. They have absolutely nothing in there.
Again, Andy, though, another one. Some of the criticism Tam Courts took last year. I mean, finishing fourth.
Yeah, they won very few of the games. They won. He started really well. United, they did finish fourth. You're right, Andy. But Celtic, Hearts, and Rangers were miles ahead of everyone. Dundee and St Johnstone were crap, and United were effectively in the middle. And yeah, okay, you can't knock it. They finished fourth, but I think they won like 6 out of the last 28 games. He started really strong, and then basically after that, it was basically hanging on. The football was not good. And there's obviously, again, going back to the Ascar point, he was off at the first opportunity, right? To a team in Hungary who's like got an average attendance of 3,000 or 4,000. I'm not sure if he was paid more money to go there. There's got to be a recurring theme. Nielsen, first call. I know it's a bigger club, Hearts, right? He leaves Ascar straight off like that. Mellon, a season off straight away like that. Courts off straight away. Then he goes out, the manager tells him to get Jack Ross and he has to empty him, and so then they have to promote within because if not...
Jack Ross is a funny one because I really did think that was a good appointment for Dundee.
No, so did I. And bizarrely, if we were to sack Fox, which I think the majority of United fans would want, you look at candidates out of work. If Ross had not been sacked earlier in the season, he would have been really high up the list about the type of managers they want to bring.
Is the fans not having Fox?
No. I mean, look, he's lost like 65% of his games as a manager at United and County Beef. I mean, he was described by Ascar on Sportsound as the outstanding candidate for the job. I mean, that's nonsense.
So I take it you were underwhelmed by that?
Yeah, massively. I mean, look at his CV. He's basically got sacked by County Beef within bottom of League Two. Has no other managerial experience whatsoever. He's clearly not the outstanding manager for the job. He's the cheap option because he spent all the money in the summer.
Would you give Jack Ross longer?
It's difficult when you're losing games 7-0, 4-1 to Hearts, 3-0 at home to St Mirren, 9-0. I think you guys talked about like the mental scars of that. I mean, it was quite clear there was obviously something up within the changing room. I mean, they've not actually...
But being in a job for 3 months is going to take you longer than that to change that sort of mentality at a team like Dundee United.
Yeah, but I mean, losing 9-0, 7. I mean, these are like results United haven't had for like 100 years. There was obviously something like...
But like you say, with Tam Courts, it was obviously grown because he'd only had 6 points in 42, did you say?
No, at the end, so Courts started really well. United finished
but towards these end, before Jack Ross taking over, the cracks were starting to show, you said.
Yeah, no, you're right. The team last season was good, but they were given a bit of money to spend in the summer, and they brought in, 3-4 good players. They brought in Beach, they brought in Levitt, they brought in McGrath, they brought in Stephen Fletcher, but they've left in one of the bigger problems was they knew Seacrest was going to Celtic. They didn't replace him. They had Trevor Carson as a ready-made replacement who's doing great for St Mirren.
Yeah, good goalie.
And instead they brought in 2 crap goalkeepers as an alternative. And that, I don't know, you guys could tell me as ex-players, but for me, there's panic because every time the ball comes into the cross, we've got like a wee 5'9" goalkeeper who's
hey, there's nothing wrong with being
flapping it. who is flapping at it, flogging goals left, right, and centre, and you can almost see the panic going throughout the team because there's a bit like you were saying, Aaron, about Aberdeen. United have some decent footballers. It's just. Yeah, well, when things are going right, they're fine. But when they go behind, they've lost 15 out of 16 games they've gone behind in this season because they're quite confident if things are going well, but they basically totally chuck it if they're losing.
Were you not saying last week though Dundee United were very good against you, Andy? The setup
first half is probably
until
the
you
best
got Edwards sent off.
Yeah. I'd say the first half is probably the best a team outside Old Firm's played at Newcastle this season. I thought first half really good. I think they have adapted slightly for last year. I think obviously Stephen Fletcher helps with that, where at times you will play a bit of football, but when you've got him as a target man up front, if it's going up there 9 times out of 10, he's going to win it. The main thing is Dundee United squad shouldn't be bottom of the league. Honestly, it should never be bottom of the league. You're talking about recruitment and teams.
But it's a lack of balance. They've got a really poor goalkeeper, and then they've not got a hatchman in the middle of the park. They've bizarrely let go of Tony Watt and basically are gambling on like a 35, 36-year-old Stephen Fletcher staying fit the rest of the season, or they are completely screwed for goals up front because their substitutes like a 16, 17-year-old.
They didn't come for the Tony Watt thing. Is that non-football reasons why?
It must be looking from the outside. I mean, you guys will know bit better than me. But I mean, you do not. I mean, what hadn't been great? You know, he was signed as top scorer of the league from Motherwell. He'd only scored 5 or 6 goals in a year for United. But he does. What provides a lot off the ball? I think for me, it's because we promoted a coach to manager. He can't manage Tony Watt. Tony Watt's clearly a big personality. Look at his CV. He's had 14 clubs in 10 years. There's obviously a difficulty managing the guy. But it's unbelievable that they let him go out the door without saying we're going to get a we're going to get a replacement in first. They didn't have any plan for that, and it's obviously an inability to manage him.
But even you play a 3-4-3, don't you? And 3 centre backs, 2 of them are full backs.
So Liam
Tony McMahon's played the
Tony
McMahon. What's his name?
Scott McMahon.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And Liam Smith's had I think he's been all right, but he's getting pelters from United fans this season because he's been really poor right centre back. So that was another. Basically, they signed the right centre back on at 1:45 and when the transfer window shut. It was basically someone had Mark Fotheringham number and they got someone in on loan from Huddersfield. Yeah. That was the only player we brought in. There was no, and there's a lot of frustration from the fans because they got the suitor money in. And look, I get why the owners aren't pumping in more money. The owners have put in £6-7 million. They cannot keep putting in that money, and the fans are a wee bit unrealistic probably in general in that. And the suitor thing, the problem is Leicester signed him at 11 o'clock on January the 31st. So if United were planning to reinvest that money, they only found out when it was too late. But the difficulty is that I think Ascar is in denial about how bad the team is and is saying, oh no, we'll be fine. Like in Sportsline, we've got a good team. Whereas they don't realise they're in a relegation dogfight. And so he's like, oh no, my recruitment's been great in the summer. And whereas the reality is we're bottom of the league after 23 games and have gone out both cups to a poor Kilmarnock side. United are in real danger of going down, and they should have. On Sportsline, he was talking about bringing in players in a longer term plan. United don't need players in a longer term situation. They need 2 good signings to help the team to the end of the season, make sure they finish 9th or 10th, and then reset and start again next year.
Do you worry about going down?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 weeks ago, no. I thought we were okay. I thought the team started off after the World Cup playing well. We've got, in my opinion, better players in Kilmarnock, Ross County and Motherwell down there, but we've got a really poor balance of squad. We're also really mentally weak, I think, in that when we go behind, we just are unable to cope with that. And now, the recruitment situation up front is bizarre. Stephen Fletcher, Glenn Middleton's kind of a striker, but more kind of a winger. And then it's a 16-year-old kid called Rory McLeod.
Yeah.
And that's what they've got. And Tony Watt, he was saying he wasn't starting many games, but the only game he started this year, he scored the winner against St Johnstone in a kind of drab game that was going to eke out 0-0. It's got a quality goal with 10 minutes to go. The club gains 2 points. Absolutely massive when you're in that position in the league. So it's completely irresponsible to have let Watt go and not recruit.
But it's even the Finnish boy, Miskinen. I've seen him play right at front 3 and he's now playing left midfield 4.
Yeah, they've got him in a kind of wing back inside. Well, that was the first game he played, and that was the thing. Ascot at interviews, oh yeah, we're giving youth a chance, such as guys like Niskanen's come back into teams. That's the models all over the place. When he came in, they talked about is it the Benicic model, the model where they try and sign leaders off the pitch. It's like an American football model where you try and sign guys, because when they came in, they were like, right, the team's completely mentally weak, so we're going to sign guys that are kind of leaders. So guys like Mark Connolly, Reynolds from Aberdeen, Callum Butcher, they're not the best footballers in the park, but they're leaders. They're basically going to be like, we're not going to accept this when the chips are down type thing. Whereas the team just now is full of quite nice footballers, but they're so soft when the team's behind. There's no leaders in there, and the recruitment's completely all over the place because they don't have a leader in there that's going to step up when things are...
But it's surprising though, having a leader when you've got guys like Charlie McGrew, who's
Fletch.
36, Fletch 37.
You couldn't ask for better leaders than to.
And the thing is with Fletch, you're saying about obviously relying on him.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he's still playing at this age because of how well he has looked after himself. He's never really had too many serious injuries. Touchwood, he stays fit. But like you say, if he doesn't stay fit,
we're down.
It's not just some of the goals he scores; it's the all-round play that allows others to get opportunities because of his style.
I don't know if the Hearts game last week, and obviously Andy, you were playing that day, but Fletcher was phenomenal. I thought certainly the first half. He obviously got the goal, but just in terms of really kind of ragdolling the kind of centre backs and really bringing chances into plays. For a guy that's 36 next month, he's still.
I think half his goals have come against Hearts this season.
Yeah, he's maybe got an extra bit of firepower. But you look at someone like Middleton, who I think is a good player. All his goals come within the first 10 minutes of the game because he runs it. I don't think he's fit enough to play 90 minutes.
Hi, B. Who Jenkins going down?
Motherwell, sorry mate.
Moves us on nicely. We're on to the high bees.
Aye.
High bees.
Your 2 favourite teams, Slane. Joined by host of the Long Bangers podcast.
Long Banger?
Is that you? You got a big banger?
Is that a biggie? Oh,
Imagine bragging about the size of your cock on your podcast. That's brilliant, that.
Said it's tiny.
The Long Bangers podcast, brilliant. Matty Fernie, slight resurgent Hibs recently that I've picked up. Back up to fifth in the table. Is it giving you faith Lee Johnson can still be the right man for the job?
I think it's a funny thing. Back up to fifth in the table. We've been shite this season. But we're only 8 points behind the best Hearts side in history, which is fucking mental.
How many points behind them?
Only two Derby defeats.
No, playing them twice, eh? So 14
but they
points.
usually beat you every time they play us.
14 points. I think it's been a weird season for Johnson. You look at injuries, and there's a few teams this season that have had big injury lists, but Johnson's lost McGeady for pretty much all the season. Nisbet's just come back. Kukovic, he's just lost McCurdy. Martin Boyle. Jake Doyle-Hayes, Kyle McGuinness. These are all players that would go into the first team.
Yeah.
Like the front three, especially. That's a whole front three that he's not had available. So to have kind of cleared out in January, had a bit of resurgence, I think he's doing all right.
What do you think of Nisbet? What do you think happened to his deal when they tried to go to Millwall?
I think he just didn't fancy it. So,
do you?
Well, I think what's happened is going down there and he's maybe had his head turned by another club. Somebody's maybe
That's what I thought,
hang on now, we'll sign you in the summer. But
are you happy he stayed,
aye? Oh, aye. I mean, he's a good quality player and he's made a difference because we were struggling for goals. As soon as Nisbet come back in the team, we were scoring. Like he can come back, scored at Ibrox, gets a hat trick at Motherwell. He's just that's what we've been missing.
Top quality.
Do you like that Lee Johnson kind of pulls people above him up in terms of the recruitment, in terms of culture of the club?
I think he needs to be careful what he says, Lee Johnson, because see when we were signing all these players in the summer, he was very clear to say, these are my signings, I've got final say. And then it gets to January and he's like, recruitment's not been good enough. I want to bring in other players. I've got too big a squad and he's wanting to clear them all out. So on the one hand, he's taking responsibility for them all, but then when they've not worked out, he's washed his hands of them. So I'm not sure how he looks in that. Like if I was a player in that squad, I'd be like, he says a few funny things, like after the defeat at Tynecastle, where he says like, I'm sick of accepting mediocrity and I've got players there who didn't have a good football IQ. And I don't know, like as players, if your gaffer said that about you, how would you be feeling in the dressing room after it?
Your ma says it about you.
All the time, I'm fucked. Sorry, Andy, you go.
I do think, obviously, Hibs again, I do think they've improved for last year, I've got to be honest, and maybe the results up until a couple of weeks ago haven't really proved that. I think Ellie Ewan, for me, has been a big player for you. I know his numbers, obviously, assists. I think he's a top assist in the league now, or maybe just one behind O'Reilly. I'm not too sure, but I think he's made a massive improvement. And if you're looking at him, Nisbet, Boyle, McGeady, if you're going in with that front four throughout a full season, chances are you're going to score goals. It's going to be dangerous for you. Now, I think when you look at Porteous leaving, the injury to Rocky Bashiri at the end of the season, who to be fair has probably improved on last year as well. I think that was an area where going into when you see the two injuries after Hearts, what does that look like to the end of the season? But Hanlon coming in, obviously he's club legend, he's been played nearly 500 games, and then Will Fish, which again for me is a weird one. You talk about recruitment. Well, for the first 6 months, they never played a game, and then he's came in through injuries over the last couple of games. A goal, 2 clean sheets. I think I read, I never seen the game, but he was one of the best players in the pitch against St Mirren. So strange one, but yeah, obviously an upturn in form over the last few games. So I think Hibs are a real interesting one to see how they continue throughout the end of the season.
What have you thought of them, Kev?
They're a bit like Aberdeen in terms of like it's stop-start. I think looking at the goals, I think Josh Campbell was your top scorer with 8, and then obviously Nisbet's got 8, but he's missed possibly the biggest part of the season. Guys like Boyle, I think he scored 5 goals. There's not a lot of goals in the actual team. Euland's been moved further forward in recent weeks. He's picked up a couple of goals, which has been good. But losing Porteous and Bashiri, I worried for Hibs, thinking, well, that's their main centre half, because I know Paul Hanlon is a club legend, and but he gets a wee bit of stick sometimes, and we're in a bad position when we're still playing the likes of Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson, 2 club legends, probably nearly 1,000 games or whatever, close to 1,000 games between them. But Hibs fans are like, we're better than that, we should have replacements, but you don't. Why is that? Like you see Lee Johnson 1 minute, he's wanting to say, this is my recruitment, it's no my recruitment, can I get recruitment? He's always got an excuse. It just reminds me of his dad all the years ago when he was managing Bristol. Hibs will be fine, but I think obviously your rivalry here with Hearts is a problem, isn't it?
How many Hibs want fine? Hibs want to be.
No, they don't want fine, but the thing is that Hearts just seem to always scud you. Why is that? What is it? Is it a mentality thing?
It must be a mentality thing,
asking-
isn't it? Must be a mentality thing.
I'm asking because I played against good Hibs sides, but I knew we were going to beat them.
It's a hard thing to describe, because there's been. We must be the unluckiest fucking club in the world to have our bogey team being our rivals, Like even the last two derbies, so 6-0 aggregate, but I think there were 2 3-0 games, 2 goals right at the end, and both games sort of put like a different reflection on the game. But the one at Easter Road there, we hit the post twice, we were on top for most of the game, come away 3-0, and it's a comprehensive beat, and you look at it on paper and you're like, fuck, that happens in derbies all the time, And I think we usually can use it, like at Hearts, I think it's drilled into them for the minute they come in the door, he beat Hibs. I think when we spoke to like the top folk at Hibs, they're like, we want to be the best team in Edinburgh, but no define ourselves against the results against Hearts.
Spot on.
And I think they need to change that. Like they need to, for me, that's the springboard for your season. Like if you win the derbies, you'll go on and have a good season. It's like that's invariably what happens. And I think Hibs need to get better at when somebody comes in the door, they're saying to them, like, that's the one fixture you didn't lose, and just make sure that's drilled into them right from the start. I think that's different. Hibs didn't define themselves with the results against Hearts, but I think it's the same the other way around.
Does Robbie Nielsen change when he's approached when you're playing Hibs, or is it as normal?
It doesn't. It's no rocket science. You know, it's a massive game for the club. It goes up Dundee United when they play Dundee, Rangers when they play Celtic, Celtic play the Rangers. You know, when it's these derby games, you know you need to win. And I know obviously Lee Johnson's complained about, you know, settling for mediocrity, but I think as a manager when you're going at a club, you want to be backed. And Hibs must have signed 14, 15 players this year. So
they spent a lot of money.
They've spent a decent amount of money. They brought in a lot of players. Some of them have been really good. Some of them maybe not so much. So as I says, when you're predicting where teams finish in the league table, Hibs for me could be anywhere. They could be 4th, could be 5th, 6th. That you don't know. It just depends who they can keep fit, what sort of run they can go on. But I suppose you could say that with a number of clubs.
If Hibs finish top 6, which I think they will do, does that cover up a crap season?
No, I don't know. I think that'd be good for the injuries that he's had.
I'm just asking them just because.
Do you think if we'd been New Easter Road, it would have been different for
question.
Lee Johnson?
They did say that though, didn't they?
I liked it being advertised as El Sakiko. Big fan of that. I think the fans surely, some of his interviews and stuff have been...
I actually think, so we spoke about it, so just before Christmas, you were looking at the 2 derbies, the cup game and the league game at Tiny, and we thought that would be make or break for him. So we weren't really looking ahead to Aberdeen. We thought if he lost those 2 games, he wouldn't survive. But then he picked up a couple of results, and then obviously the 6-0 against Aberdeen. But the board backed him in clearing out the squad in January. Like we got rid of loads of players, and players that were like Melkerson, who like they spent 400,000 on him. It was like a huge signing for Hibs, and they've emptied him. So that was like a wee sign that I think the board were going to stick by him to the end of the season, at least, irrespective of what happens in that game.
That interview and said there's 10 players I could get rid of tomorrow, and I thought, oh, right.
Do you think a Hearts manager would survive losing 2 derbies 3-0?
We don't lose derbies, mate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think Nielsen would, by the way.
Well, Nielsen didn't survive
Or
us
is
winning
that
the
like
cup.
a mentality thing?
Listen, if all the Hearts fans were like you and they lost 2 derbies, he would want them out.
I'd want him out 100%.
Fair point.
100%.
Matt, you've been outstanding. You get a question for the panel?
So my question was about that. When you hear managers' comments, like you're looking at him as your gaffer, and does he trust you? And he says you've not got good football IQ. Do you find it difficult to play for him after that?
I think, but listen, I've been out of the game obviously this season, but I think certain players would get annoyed by that. Certain comments, I think sometimes managers go into the press and say things, but the players know what he's saying in the dressing room and what it means. But I think certain comments like that could rub you up the wrong way.
I would be looking at the manager and looking at his career first, foremost as a player, and then I'd be thinking, who are you? I don't know. I'd question it. Wouldn't be saying it to him, but see if you are not playing well and you can't identify that your football IQ isn't quite at it, then sheepishly you should just be keeping quiet and shutting up. But I don't think I would accept that. No.
Kev, I remember seeing Mother. I remember Jim Gannon came out and had to go to all the senior players, and I remember it there was a sort of meeting in the dressing room with the majority of the players that they weren't going to accept that, and then from there it just sort of had a worse effect.
And was that the end of Jim Gannon?
It became like that.
Essentially, it was, yeah, because we went on a 6-game losing streak, and then he ended up not speaking to the press.
That's what it was.
And then I think it was after a 2-week draw, if I remember rightly, and then that was him just gone out the door.
I think it's bad management. I think it's bad.
Well, it's a pity we've not got a St Mirren fan on, because I remember Stephen Robinson doing it at the end of last season. Do you remember? 2-3 games ago, towards the end of the season, Stephen Robinson came out after a run of defeats. He'd only been in the job maybe 2 months, and a big part of his interview was basically about clearing poisonous players, deadwood. To be honest, their squad hasn't really changed that much for last year, so it can do. It's a sitting on the fence answer, but it can do two things. It can light a fire under players' belly, or it could mean that XYZ player tosses it off because they think they're talking about him. So, but I mean, it seems to have worked just now because there has been some sort of reaction over the last few games. So,
that is the type of person that you've got in it. Like, again, I've said it before on the podcast. The Canio came out to the press and said, "Si Ferry, I need a Rottweiler and I've got a fucking Chihuahua." But I didn't mind it. But I know if it was said to other players in the dressing room, it would affect them. I think that sort of criticism should be kept in house.
I do think if they say it in the four walls and then it gets said in the media, I think you can accept it as a player because he said it to your face. But if it's not said in a changing room and it's only said to the media for thousands of people to read, I think it's different.
Right, the man of the moment, best or last?
Man of the moment, Ewan, innit, Si? Ewan. For Livy, we've already spoke to him, but I'm going to touch base with him again. Do you start to fear that Davy Martindale the time could be coming up that he's going to go and get a bigger job? Sorry, no, a better job.
For me, there's no better job than the Livingston job, but for me, it's a matter of time before he's getting linked with better jobs, because the job he's done with us, even before he took the manager's job, he was instrumental in us coming up from League 1, and then the playoff season where we got promoted. And in terms of, like, you guys have been in recently, like, even behind the scenes at the club, the work that Davy's done in terms of the infrastructure that he's put in place, and a lot of that's down to him.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't see why clubs like Aberdeen, clubs like Dundee United, clubs like Hibs aren't looking at Davy and what he's done at Livingston.
Definitely take him at United.
Would you take him at United?
100%.
But does he get to act at these clubs as he gets to act at Livingston? And is that why Livingston have been so successful? Because he makes all the decisions. Yeah. You go to these teams, Aberdeen, Hibs, you've got a guy above you telling you who to sign, how to play.
I think that's probably one of the things that keeps him at Livingston in a way, is because he's a bit old school in terms of a manager, in that he does all the recruitment. He doesn't have a sporting director telling him, giving him 3 options of players to come and pick from. He does the recruitment himself. He does the vast majority of scouting himself and amongst the backroom team. So he has a lot of control. That's where I would maybe say keeps him at Livingston rather than going to a club like an Aberdeen or Dundee United, etc.
By the way, we spoke about if Ange left Celtic, how difficult it would be to find a manager to come in. My word, what about Livingston if Martindale?
What, you were going to say Martindale for Celtic?
No, he's fitting right.
Davy Martindale.
Ange de Levy.
Genuinely, you're right though.
It's a great point to get round that point.
The amount he does at the football club, and I mean, we've only interviewed him once, but I've said it numerous times. He's my favourite manager in the league. I love listening to him talk. I love the way he is in interviews, how honest he is. And I don't know what his wages at Livy, but it should be 5 wages rolled into one. I mean, I remember 2 months ago before the game, the level of the crossbar wasn't right. You're seeing Davy Martindale on a stepladder an hour before.
He's been found on like cherry pickers and that, changing bulbs and the floodlights and everything.
It's incredible.
He does everything at football.
It's incredible. And we touched on the recruitment he does and how invested he is in everything that goes on at Livingston. But we another thing we touched on in the podcast earlier, I don't think enough said about Livingston's style of playing now compared to maybe what it was last year or maybe what it was 2 years ago. And they've all been successful seasons, but for me, there's definitely been a difference in style. There is more attacking intent. No, I think the introduction of Stephen Kelly's been a big part of that. Obviously, I was with him when he was at Rangers as a youth player, really technical player, really good. The boy Kyle Bradley that's came in for Hibs, I think, has been excellent. But I mean, I've said it so many times, Joe Newbley, I think it'll be very difficult for you to hold on to him. I really do.
I think the bonus we've got with Noobs is that we've got the option to extend his contract for another year. So it's the ball's in our court essentially with Noobs, and
even if
we
his
should be commanding a decent.
Davy would not let him leave, mate, for free, would he?
Oh no, he'll put him in the back of the van.
You've been drinking? You've been drinking?
But Andy, what you're talking about in terms of the style of play, you sit and read on social media that we're a bunch of hatchet men, but we've got a midfield that average height of like 5'8", 5'9". How can you say we're a big physical team when that's your midfield? But last year, Davy made I think a conscious effort to try and change how we played. He went to a 4-3-3. We played with 2 wide men. You play with Alan Forrest now, who was excellent for us last year. And I think we've progressed massively in terms of the style of play. Granted, we've still got elements of what got us to the top flight in terms of we can mix it up a bit. But I do think we play a much better brand of football. Look at the Kilmarnock game we played the other week. The 3 goals we scored were excellent. And that proves all Hearts fans wrong that we can play good football on the surface. But yeah, I think Davy doesn't get the credit he deserves in terms of what he's done at Livingston.
St Johnstone as well. St Johnstone at Dermot Park, 3-0 up inside 25 minutes, whatever it may be. But obviously, I think you look at the squad, you've got good players, some very good players, but I think Davy is that manager who gets the best out of every single individual. Doesn't matter who it may be, he's getting that extra 10% out of all of them. Obviously, right back, Slane thinks you've got the best right back in the league, so that's your boy, innit?
By the way, that's for any young player out there. That boy, Nicky Devlin, Scott Booth sat him down in Stenhousemuir, the wee office after training one day and says, I'm letting you go, you're no good enough. That was for a League 2 team. A few years like captain of Livingston now pushing on it. I mean, by God, Steve Clark, I think, is looking to get my call up for Scotland as well. So I think Andrew's speaking to him now, isn't he?
How do you think Davy would handle it if he did go to Aberdeen? Much more expectation, bigger fans. Could he go and be successful at a club like that, Kev?
I think of what he does at Livingston with the money that he has. Imagine you gave him money and resources to actually help him recruit better players and able to pay a wee bit more. Could we see a stronger Aberdeen under Davy Martindale? I think he possibly could. I don't think you would ever have that worry if he was at like a Dundee United or a Motherwell, a St Mirren or something like that, or St Johnstone. You'd never have that worry of him being in a relegation fight, because you would always trust that if they don't do nice football, they know how to do it the other way. Whereas I don't think Foxy knows how to shut up shop and just grab a point on the road. I think Hamill was struggling with Motherwell. Can we just get a point today in that? Whereas Davy would always, you'd never see, I think I looked at the last 10 fixtures, I think there's only one game where they've lost more than 2 goals in a game. They never get scudded like 2-3-1, 4-1, apart from the odd time. Apart from the weekend there in the Cup, but I don't think he's taking the Cup too seriously. But I would love to see him get an opportunity at an Aberdeen or a Motherwell or somebody a bit, just to try and like prove that he is as good as what we're seeing at Livingston, because I don't think he always gets the credit that he should require doing what he's doing at Livingston.
This feels like you're all Martindale's agent and you're trying to get him this job at Aberdeen.
It's how we get people jobs. We've not got anybody a job yet, but we're trying.
Well, see what guys like Martindale, Robbie Nielsen, and when you interview them, is that they're good people.
Yep.
They're relatable. See, when you sit with them, they give you their time, they look at you, they take on what you're asking them, they want to help you as well. And I think that goes a long way in terms of their relationship with their players as well. I think that's a big part of why these guys are successful.
Well, see, just to kind of touch on that, like Gogsy mentioned, the kind of poisonous bit in the dressing room at Motherwell. See, at Livy, there's no egos in our dressing room. Like, if you have an ego, you're not going to last very long at Livy. You'll be shown the door as quickly as you've come in if you've got an ego. And that's the ethos of the football club that Davies set going back 7-8 years.
I think if you asked any of us who were best managers were, the best managers were the guys that were impressionable as a person, first and foremost, and I think Davy Martindale has that. I think he can get the absolute 100% best out of any player that he comes across, and I don't think he would ever have a huff with anybody. I think he would rather try and resolve the issue because of what he's probably experienced in his life on and off the park. And I just think, like Livingston, I think you as a fan and the rest of your fans would be grateful that you have him. And you probably don't want to see him go. I know you as an Aberdeen fan don't want to see the likes of Davy Martindale at your club. But fuck me, you're hard to please.
Can I just ask you, generally, when you're talking about all-time Livingston managers, where do you rank Davy Martindale just now, considering when he got the job in League One?
For me, he's our best ever manager. And if he took us top 6, you've got a great opportunity at European football. If he takes us into Europe, he's definitely hands down.
Was it last year you were so close? Was it last minute?
Last minute, Motherwell.
We'll not talk about Motherwell on the day before the split.
But the hump.
Yeah, that cursed us greatly because it kept Graham Alexander in the job.
That was all tactical. We decided to miss out in top 6 to keep him in the job. But Nah, I think Davy Martindale's our greatest ever manager. There's an argument like Jim Leishman and stuff, but there was a lot of money floating about, Livy, that we didn't actually have when Jim took us up the divisions. But Davy's done it on the most shoestring of budgets, and we're punching well above our weight season on season. Just about every pundit, every season fancies us to go down. Whilst we've been in the top flight, we've never even been in a scrap. We've been comfortable every season. We've finished top 6 2 of those seasons. Yeah, he's our best ever manager, I think.
What a way to end it.
Right, go on, Kev, you end it. Come on. Big Pavarotti, sing a song for us. Come on, Big Pavarotti. Come on, Kev. He's a blast, a song.
No, not tonight. Come
on, he's a tune, Kev. Come on.
I'm not feeling it.
Money talks.
It don't sing down.
It don't walk.
Long as I can
live me. I much rather be forever in blue jeans. Well done, everybody.
Thanks for coming. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. The couch is burst.